In the protagonist's past life, he worked in a rescue team and died in an accident. After that, he woke up in this world full of mutated beasts and those called the Awakened Ones. In this place, he also awakened a power. By expending physical and mental energy, he could create gems. If the target accepts the gem, he can control their life, soul, and even their consciousness. In theory, this seems like an extremely overpowered ability. But of course, there's an obvious problem. With the gem in hand, someone asks what Zhang Ping is doing. He tells Su Jingyao that it's nothing special and asks if she wanted candy. However, she tells him to forget it since she would never want to be controlled by him. The problem with the ability is that the person has to know what happens when they consume the gem and accept the contract voluntarily. Otherwise, it's useless. The original owner of this body nearly exploded with rage because the ability was useless. However, having lived for a long time, he had a more resilient mentality to withstand such a useless power. Still, Su Jingyao tells him not to give up and that soon he'll find some creature that will accept being dominated by him. The boy says it's easy to say, but besides himself, no one else would accept it. That's when he gets an idea and wonders why he never thought of it before. He starts eating the gem and Su Jingyao asks what he is doing. Instantly, the green power begins to envelop his body and a strange energy rises to the sky. Su Jingyao approaches and asks if he's okay, to which he replies that he is. She tells him to be more careful because it was scary. They then chat for a while. She says it's late and she's going back to the dorm. The boy asks if she really is about to graduate. She explains that she has already learned everything from the books and now only combat will make her stronger. The boy knows that joining the patrol team and protecting the land had always been her childhood dream. She tells him not to be too discouraged. Once he gets stronger, perhaps they can work together. The boy is so useless that he was given the role of farmer at the school. He tells her to forget it because he'll probably live a very simple life. Even so, the boy feels a bit sad. Although she had been a friend of the body's previous owner, he still felt strange leaving her. He thinks he really wanted to give her a hug. Suddenly, out of nowhere, he starts grabbing her. It feels like he's watching himself from another consciousness, wondering why his body is moving on its own. She is flustered and says she's leaving, and with that, she runs off. He tells her to be careful on the way. She turns around slightly embarrassed and tells him to also pay more attention to things. The boy waves goodbye with a smile. However, he noticed that his body moved on its own when he wanted to give her a hug. It was as if, subconsciously, he had commanded himself. Maybe it was a coincidence. Obviously, he wanted to confirm it. He commanded himself to fly like Superman and fell face first to the ground like an idiot. He prepared a mountain fist punch, but it did absolutely nothing except make him fall again like a fool. He ended up crying on the floor. But he realized that now, with his mind, he could perform any action. Of course, it couldn't exceed the normal capabilities of what a human could do. However, as long as he knew exactly the movement that needed to be made, he didn't need to practice. In theory, if the body is capable of executing the movement, he can master any martial art without much effort. The biggest obstacle in front of him now was his own physical aptitude. However, there was still something he wanted to check. The next day, little by little, he opens his eyes and notices he's in the cafeteria exhausted. His legs hurt like hell because he had ordered his body to wake up in the middle of the night and go for a run. The hypothesis that he could control his body even without consciousness was confirmed, and apparently no one suspected anything. People start commenting that someone named Lu Xiu was arriving. She greets everyone with a radiant presence, and the boy knows that she is the beauty of the school. Suddenly, he hears some strange cracking sounds and wonders what the hell it is. Next to him, there was some kind of creature with a giant fox-like face eating someone. The girl seemed to be getting consumed, and no one said anything. It was as if no one besides him was noticing it. That clearly wasn't Lu Xiu. All twisted up, she approached Zhang Ping and said he didn't seem to be doing well. However, at the same time, everything seemed normal in that place. But she was clearly a creature wanting to know if he was sick. Zhang Ping kept repeating to himself to stay calm, and with a trembling voice, he said he was fine. It was just that he had some nightmares and didn't sleep well. He stood up, saying it was time for his class, so he was leaving. However, Lu Xiu wondered aloud if she didn't smell fear. Walking down the hallway, he wondered why there were mutated beasts in the school and why no one noticed them. He went to the classroom thinking he had to tell the teacher about it immediately. But when he got there, he got another scare. What seemed to be the teacher was consuming a girl on the floor. Obviously, he ran out right away. He went to the top floor and sat on a bench, desperate. Something was wrong and he didn't know what was happening. The only thing that had changed recently was that he consumed the stone and started seeing these beasts. He wanted to eat another one, thinking that all this was some kind of illusion. Once again, the green aura started to come out of his body, and a system message said it was doing an evaluation. With that, the scenes he had seen before began to replay. The illusion disappeared, and he was left somewhat breathless. It seemed the system had unlocked an analysis ability. At the moment, he was only a 3-star human with almost no talent. What he also noticed now was that the contract gems had levels. One of the talents was absolute command, meaning the person had to do whatever he ordered. However, at the same time, since he was a contractor, he also had absolute obedience and couldn't disobey. Another talent of his was evaluation, which allowed him to better understand targets depending on the power difference. He figured this had to do with him eating the gem. He began to analyze the fact that he became both the contractor and the contracted. Since he could control his own body through the ability's consciousness, he was no longer affected by powers that created illusions for his body. These foxes were all high level, and he stood no chance against any of them due to the cognitive distortion they could create. They could eat a person without anyone else noticing. He remembered that Su Jingyeo, his childhood friend, had mental abilities, so maybe it would be better to talk to her. After school, he decided to meet her. What scared him was what he saw outside the school. A romantic couple passed by him, but the girl had already been dominated by a fox. He then went to the patrol team headquarters. He approached the receptionist, who, looking beautiful, asked him what he wanted. The boy said he was there to find a girl named Su Jingyeo, who must have joined today. But lo and behold, the woman also turned into a fox and told him to wait a moment. Sitting on the bench, he wondered how those damn creatures had already dominated even the patrol team. Apparently, not even high-level awakened ones could see this illusion. And if anyone asked what he was doing there, it was Su Jingyeo. Zhang Ping said he was worried that she wouldn't adapt, so he came to check on her. She said he didn't need to worry and introduced the allies from her team, saying that everyone that took good care of her. The boy admitted that it truly was impressive. She then excitedly said that from now on, she would work hard and get stronger to destroy all the beasts and avenge her relatives. She suggested he should join the patrol team too, as they were short on members. But the boy, embarrassed, said his ability was kind of weak, so he wouldn't be able to help much. Seeing how well she was adapting, and given that he was just a farmer, he said he was leaving. However, he already suspected the truth. He only said goodbye to Su Jingyeo and her entire team, who were all foxes too. Trying not to show fear, he left, wondering how the strongest group in that city had been wiped out. Su Jingyeo had only just arrived, and she was already in this situation. These creatures were called foxes of natural order. Their ability made anything out of the ordinary seem completely routine, and in those moments they hadn't just infiltrated the school but the entire city. The entire city of Pearl had turned into cattle for these monsters. Using the analysis technique, he managed to uncover some details about these creatures. First, most of them ranged from intermediate to high levels. However, back at the patrol team, there were several creatures whose levels he couldn't even assess. Second, the creature that killed Lu Shi was extremely powerful, and the moment he tried to analyze it, he knew he would be discovered. That creature was either at an advanced level or even a king-level beast. With so much power, it was no wonder they had wiped out the city without anyone noticing, especially considering that, compared to other beasts, they were extremely intelligent and all their abilities were for disguise. Fourth, it seemed the foxes always prioritized the most influential people in society, while the others were mere cattle for them to feed on. In this current situation, it would be a death sentence to face so many of them head-on. However, he couldn't just stand by and watch so many innocent citizens die. He needed a way to get stronger. A week later, he woke up at 3:54 a.m. Since he received the ability, it seemed his body was resting much better. In addition, he advanced to level 2 after training a lot. All the remaining physical and mental energy he had was being turned into gems to consume, in hopes that sooner or later he'd get a better one or some evolved talent. After all, ever since he leveled up, the gems had turned colorless, and he seemed to get nothing from consuming them. However, today he finally got another one with color. He consumed it, saying that it looked more like poison, but he hoped it would have some effect this time. After a while, power began accumulating in him, and in his profile he received a new ability, Night Walker. It granted him night vision, reduced his presence at night, and if he was in the shadows, he became completely invisible. In addition, the contract gem also leveled up to 2, and he wondered if it had something to do with his base level. If he could merely gain a new talent with every level, he would eventually become invincible. But now that he had the new talent, there was no reason to delay. Time to start practicing. Activating the Night Walker ability, he said he wanted to test it. He ran around the school and noticed that his vision at night was now far better than during the day. He could spot any object, including a strange ring lying on the ground. He crouched, finding it a bit odd that it was there. He tried using his analysis abilities several times until he finally succeeded. It was the Ring of Assassination, which, when worn, made all forms of life unconsciously ignore the user completely. The analysis then showed what had happened. The natural order fox controlling Lu Xiu's body had faced a man, probably the true owner of the ring. He had attacked, but she seemed to be expecting him, and with a single slash, the poor guy was cut in half. He knew that Lu Xiu had always been an honest girl, so she wasn't the target of this attack. This meant that besides him, there were other people in the city of Pearl going against these foxes. Suddenly, a fox jumped over the wall and asked who was there. The fox leaped into the bushes, saying she was sure the ring had been there. She had noticed someone's presence, but strangely couldn't sense anything now. If he managed to escape her radar, he was probably an intermediate level awakened one or higher. The boy realized that the fallen ring was actually a trap, and the fox retreated, saying she had to inform the royalty. But that was great for him, as combined with the Night Walker ability, he was now basically invisible. The sun finally rose, and it was 5:36 a.m. Since he needed to get stronger as fast as possible, items were indeed the best solution. However, suddenly he heard some footsteps approaching. A strange voice called his name. He wondered who it was and who was speaking to him, but the voice only told him to hide. The girl then grabbed his face and warned him that they were coming, or rather, they were already there in his room. It had been 4 minutes since he woke up, and there were 3 foxes staring at his sleeping body. The one controlling Lu Xiu asked if it was him and prepared a red attack in her hand, telling him to die. The claw came straight for his face as he drooled. The fox paused the attack, thinking that if it had been him, he would have fought for his life. Besides, she couldn't sense the presence of that ring. Another fox, however, said he was very suspicious since he went out for walks every day. But today, he didn't. However, Lu Xiu, who was also royalty, said it wasn't him. That one was just a worthless meal, and they should learn that food in this city wasn't to be wasted. Some time passed, and the boy woke up startled. He spat out the ring, saying that was a close call. He was stupid to forget about today's walk, and he was lucky he forced his body to swallow that ring, avoiding exposure. What he found strange was hearing Su Jingyeo's voice telling him to hide. He wasn't sure if he was getting sentimental or what was happening, but he knew he had to get stronger and get revenge. For now, to avoid any suspicion, he needed to continue living normally. Later, he went to the cafeteria, and 2 girls were commenting that they had found a body split in half this morning. It seemed it was a guy named Black Star, an extremely talented assassin from the city of Pearl. The boy wondered if it was the person from his vision. If even someone so famous in the city was killed like that, clearly Lu Xiu wouldn't be easy to deal with. The strange thing was that they left the body for the public to see. Maybe it was a way to send a warning to those opposing the foxes of natural order. Their surveillance was going to increase, and he urgently needed to find new equipment. After class, he decided to check out some blacksmiths. However, in every shop he went to, it always seemed to be run by a fox. Suddenly, he performed another analysis. The system congratulated him for having conducted 100 analyses and informed him that he had reached the intermediate ranking of the ability. He could now see growth potential and even some talents. The fox had called him into the shop, but he simply thanked her, saying he wasn't interested. His priority was to find a store that hadn't been taken over yet. He approached a blacksmith called Soul Iron, where someone inside said the sword was of high quality. A blonde guy was trying to sell it to the old man, saying he didn't want to brag too much, but that blade was extremely good and he was offering it for a low price. However, the old man told him to take his eyes off his daughter and get those trashy things out of there. Angry, the guy got in the old man's face and asked if he hadn't heard what he said. Suddenly, Zhang Ping grabbed the sword that the guy had left on the table. The man asked what he was doing while the boy used his analysis ability. The blonde guy came over, telling him to give it back or he'd get beaten up. But the system warned that while the sword was attention-grabbing, it was useless since it had been repaired terribly. Right then, Zhang Ping said that the sword would break, and indeed, it snapped at that moment. The blonde guy started crackling with electricity, saying that Zhang Ping had ruined his plans and asked if he knew who he was. He claimed to be a direct disciple of the martial arts master from Xingyi School. He lunged at Zhang Ping, unleashing a flurry of light attacks. But Zhang Ping had sent out a shadow clone. Then Zhang Ping simply slapped the guy in the face. The boy questioned how he could be so weak, and the blonde guy called him dirty. Zhang Ping wasn't afraid at all since he had already seen that this sickly guy was only a level 1 with limited growth potential. The guy shouted that one day he'd get revenge when he became stronger. Zhang Ping just thought that he was delusional. But while Zhang Ping was distracted, the guy tried a sneak attack. He ended up knocked out on the ground, and Zhang Ping commented on how much this guy liked fighting dirty. Suddenly, someone approached, saying they were gone for a second, and the blacksmith's shop got noisy. The one arrived with incredibly strong abs and warned that if the guy didn't leave, he'd be beaten up. The blonde guy ran off terrified, and Zhang Ping realized it would be better to leave too. However, the woman blocked his way, and he asked what the problem was. She said it would be better if he stayed so they could have a little chat. The scene then gave a peek into the boy's room, showing us the staircase where the story began, where he had spoken with his childhood friend. This was also the sports field where he did his daily morning walks and found the ring lying on the grass. Back at the blacksmith shop, Zhang Ping asked what the woman wanted to talk about. She said she was a weak, single girl who struggled every day to survive and had to take care of her uncle. She noticed that Zhang Ping had great potential and physical strength, so she wanted to ask him a little favor. She wanted him to stay with the old man named Liu Tifeng, take care of the shop, and learn everything about blacksmithing. Obviously, she would cover accommodations, meals, and even pay him. Zhang Ping was overwhelmed with joy, thinking it would be great to learn as he would need many items and didn't have much money. Plus, the shop didn't seem to be controlled by the natural order foxes. He struck a worker's pose, saying he was a man of the field and wouldn't shy away from work. She slapped him on the face, saying that's what she expected from a guy she was interested in. Zhang Ping muttered that his first priority would be to survive her hits. A few days passed with him working at the blacksmith shop, and someone told him to put more force into it. He asked if it was okay to do something like that, and she said it was fine since no one was coming to check on them. She encouraged him to continue, saying it was really good. Obviously, he was forging, not what you might have thought, right? She was teaching him how to hammer the materials, and she told him to wait a moment while she went to get some molds from the warehouse. The coal to be used was in a bucket, and he was warned not to let the fire go out. The problem was that there was more than one bucket, and he didn't know which one to use. He came to the brilliant conclusion that if he threw everything in, one of them would work. So he threw it into the furnace to keep the fire going. However, the whole place exploded. Flames shot in every direction. Zhang Ping thought he was done for and wondered if he had died. But then a strange skull appeared on his chest, absorbing part of the power, and all the flames seemed to be entering his body. Suddenly, he woke up with one eye burning. The entire place was filled with smoke and ashes, but he didn't seem to be dead. However, his heart was burning and racing. Realizing he was on fire, he used his analysis ability on himself. His growth potential had risen to 4 stars. The more stars he gained, the more he could evolve his abilities, and evolving the abilities he had already acquired would further increase his potential. What he found odd was that people usually had a limit to growth increases, so why was he awakening so many talents? This time, he had awakened Flame Devourer, which allowed him to absorb fire energy and release it at any moment. What he found strange was that he had consumed a level 3 gem that morning, but the power had only been released after this accident. Suddenly, the woman appeared, asking what happened. She noticed that the scarlet scales were gone and said that those caused an explosion when thrown into the furnace, but she admitted it was her fault for not telling him. He apologized to Sister Rose Kirang and said he would pay the price to repair everything. She told him that just being okay was good enough and asked how he hadn't died, since it was hard to put out the fire from such a scale. Moreover, she saw that he had created a material that required an extremely high temperature. She started casting the item into the mold, saying he had great potential. She remarked that the Academy still rated him with low performance. He was good enough to enter one of the 3 major organizations. He said he knew the patrol squad and the investigation squad, but what was this third one? She explained that there was indeed a third organization in the city. Almost no one in Pearl City knew what they were called or what they did. She then asked if he needed equipment and told him to take the dagger if he didn't mind. Seeing its glow, he remarked that it looked quite expensive. The good quality dagger was called Beautiful Tears and dealt damage to any creature below level 19. She explained that it was worth at least 100,000, which would be around 3 years of salary for that fool. He asked how someone poor like him, who earned 3,000, could walk around with something like that. She told him to see it as a reward for improving so quickly. She mentioned that she was going on a mission and asked if he was sure he wouldn't return to the academy. He replied that she didn't need to worry because he had already filled out the graduation papers. She told him to take care of the old man and not let him open the shop. Zhang Ping realized that the foxes had no interest in this place because they rarely opened it. However, of all the things happening lately, it might have drawn some attention. Since it was night, perhaps it was a good time to take a look around the street. Out there, and he saw a little girl on a swing looking all cute. But of course, she was a damn fox with 4 stars of power. The interesting thing was that this was the first time he had seen a level 3 fox. Since both he and the fox were level 3, and he had the new dagger and abilities, he figured he could probably win. The patrol squad had been killed, but the investigation squad should still be fine. If he can deliver the body of a natural order fox to them, he could get some attention. But suddenly, he was frozen in place and someone asked if he was trying to attack a child. He was warned not to move or he would lose his life. The woman told him to drop his weapon, and he already knew that whoever she was far above his level. Both his Night Walker ability and the Ring of Assassination had been detected by her. The voice then said that if he didn't want to die, he should meet her at the training ground by the orphanage. With that, she vanished into the air. At least the fact that he was still alive meant she wasn't on the side of the foxes. He grew up in that orphanage, and as a child, he started calling it the training ground. But that's how she referred to the place, which meant she somehow knew him or knew something about him. Not only did this figure seem to be watching him, but she also stopped him just as he was about to make a move. If she had sent him there, she must have had a purpose. Suddenly, a paw stepped near him. A mutated beast approached, and he wondered why there was one in the forest. It was a level 5 armored poisoned rat. Considering the level difference, he thought about retreating, but then he remembered that with the dagger in hand, he could win. Especially considering that the orphanage children would be in danger if they came out and saw this. Thinking of how much Sister Rose Chang trusted him, he couldn't back down. Even though he didn't know how to fight perfectly yet, he had read plenty of stories about battles and he had full control over his body. Suddenly, the rat lunged at him and started rolling in his direction. He quickly thought of a way to defend himself and managed to block the attack. The problem was that the creature kept spinning and its armor was extremely tough. It ricocheted and crashed into a rock. From there, it opened its hand and began gathering green energy. Zhang Ping began controlling himself as if he were in a game, dodging everything left, right, left to evade every attack. The only weak point of the creature was its eyes, as its entire body was protected by armor. Seeing the flames in his hands, he knew how to handle this. He rushed toward the creature, dodging its attacks, and said he'd make a feint first. He struck, but the rat defended itself and rolled into a ball again. But then Zhang Ping prepared and told it not to get angry. He unleashed a barrage of flames at the monster's feet, taking advantage of the moment when its resistance was reduced, and landed a solid hit on the creature. Sometime later, he leveled up and gained a few attributes. Clearly, combat was the most efficient way to level up. What he found strange was the appearance of a rat in the middle of the city. It was highly suspicious. While he was thinking about whether there were other creatures, something approached him from behind. In an instant, he seemed to fall into a swamp, and before he knew it, he hit the ground. He fell flat on his back like a fool in a cave. A voice reached out a hand and said he had 5 minutes. He recognized it as the same voice from before. A girl pointed an ice blade at him and told him to prove that he was human. He was confused, wondering how he could prove something like that. He had been born human, so maybe that was proof enough. But that he realized that if she was asking something like that, it was because she knew there were some beasts in disguise. However, she couldn't tell, which was why she wanted him to prove it. He then asked her to give him some hints about how he could prove it. He already suspected that the rat from earlier had been a test from her. She told him he had 4 minutes left, and he continued using his analysis ability. It had already been 20 times, and he kept failing. On the 999th attempt, it finally advanced to a higher level. With that, he tried again, and the analysis passed. Her name was Liu Cixin, a level 28 human from the Purging Squad. He had never heard of this group before and thought it might be the third one that Sister Rose mentioned. Angrily, she told him he only had 1 more minute to prove himself. He mentioned that if she called the orphanage the training ground, then she must have grown up there too. The problem was that he didn't remember anyone named Liu Cixin from the orphanage, so he asked if she was Liu Torin or Liu Yusho. Maybe she was Xingyu or Sissy. The boy received a small cut, telling him to be quiet. She said that none of this proved he was human. However, John Ping figured she must be Liu Sissy because she reacted when he mentioned that name. She was 3 years older than him, and by the time he had joined the academy, she had already graduated. He needed to recall something that only the two of them knew. He remembered that she once taught him the earth-crushing fist and began mimicking the movements she had shown him back then. He said that it seemed she really was Sissy. However, she interrupted him, saying she would ask a second question. She pointed out that his ability was the contract gem, which was supposed to be useless. So what had he been doing during this time, and why did he seem stronger? He explained that 2 weeks ago he consumed the contract gem and now had control over his body, making him immune to any beast illusions. Based on what he had observed, there was a massive group of natural order foxes within Pearl City. He believed that their entire tribe had already infiltrated. She asked if he was telling the truth since a fox's basic talent was cognitive distortion. He started explaining about the city's influential figures, the weapon shop, and even the girl on the park swing. All of them were natural order foxes. She told him to wait there while she checked something and asked someone named Jin Bo if he thought the information was reliable. The man replied that they had never discovered the natural order foxes inside Pearl City, but some investigations pointed to something similar involving cognitive distortion. He would send 2 people to capture the nearest foxes, and they should be back soon. However, at that moment, an explosion occurred behind him. 2 men were lying on the ground, and he asked what had happened. One of them came running, saying that the crazy one following them was the owner of the cafeteria. The moment they tried to ask her to come with them, she started attacking everyone. The next thing they knew, she was face to face with the leader. But the man calmly prepared his fist and told her to die, hitting her square in the chest effortlessly. The girl disintegrated, and he remarked that it was arrogant of her to attack like that. As the body lost its aura, it turned into a fox. The man confirmed that the boy's information seemed legitimate. Finally, they began to understand who their enemies were. He told the team to be informed, and they would start hunting down these targets. Meanwhile, at the Pearl Academy, the lovely Liu Xiu was lying down. Except, of course, she was a terrible fox. She and her friend seemed to sense something. Without hesitation, Liu Xiu leaped from the top floor, thanks to her distortion ability, making it irrelevant. In truth, she sensed that a girl named Yu Ju had been killed outside the city, while another had been killed in the business district. Who was managing to hunt them down so perfectly and avoid her detection? Obviously, she wasn't going to let this slide. Back in the dark space, Zhang Ping asked if Sissy had finished her investigation. She replied that she had, but he was still quite strange, given that he had received this ability out of nowhere. Since they couldn't fully trust him yet, he would only act as an informant. She would keep a close eye on him, and if he found anything, he should get in touch. Zhang Ping agreed, saying he'd do anything to avenge himself against the foxes. She threw him an item explaining that this jade comes in pairs. He had the cold one, and if he applied heat to it, the hot jade she carried would warm up, serving as a kind of signal. Still, she advised him to keep getting stronger. No one could guarantee his safety 100%. Zhang Ping was excited, playing with the jade, saying he really wished he had joined the martial arts academy, but he didn't have the money for it. Sissy said she'd talked to the organization to secure a spot for him. The boy excitedly thanked Sister Sissy. Recently, the number of foxes in the city had been decreasing significantly, allowing the squad to kill them all. Luckily, he had gained his ability at just the right time, discovered the squad, and learned her identity. Thankfully, everything was going well, and the foxes were being eliminated. Plus, he had received $10,000 right away, which was quite generous. A girl approached him, asking if he was interested in learning martial arts at the Beast King Academy. The boy agreed, saying he'd like to check it out. This martial world was highly capitalistic, with each technique priced in dollars. The girl assured him that it would definitely be worth his money. The Beast King's martial techniques were highly valued in Pearl City, and she grabbed him, saying that if he didn't believe her, she could show him. She then prepared and told him that the first 3 techniques were the monkey technique, the crocodile technique, and the phoenix technique. Zhang Ping noticed that the movements were much more precise than what he had been using. It really was a good martial art. The only issue was that it was clear the girl wasn't fully prepared to teach it properly. Being a gentleman, Zhang Ping asked if she was okay. As they were talking, two side characters showed up itching for a fight, and one of them asked who had given her permission to hand out flyers there. Embarrassed, she apologized, saying she didn't know she wasn't allowed to. Then that annoying blonde guy, Andy, showed up, saying that the beast fist technique was ridiculous. As he approached, our protagonist already wanted to punch him because he teased him about the thunder technique. Of course, the guy didn't like that and said it was time for revenge from the blacksmith shop incident. But the girl stepped in front, saying no one was going to hurt Zhang Ping. The guys started yelling and tearing off their shirts. Zhang Ping activated his analysis ability. The two fools were level 4 and said they would finish them off. They were using a skill that reduced intelligence by 70% for a little bit of extra strength. Zhang Ping was confused. He wasn't even sure if that could be called a talent. He then turned his attention to the girl, whose name was Wang Jimin, and saw that she had a ton of potential for growth. She would definitely be strong in the future, but at level 3, she would only get beaten up. So he handed the flyers back to her, saying this was his problem and he would handle it. After all, he was eager to test the techniques he had just learned from her. One of the fools lunged at him, but Zhang Ping easily dodged and landed the first style strike to the back of the neck. The second guy came, but Zhang Ping elbowed him in the stomach, saying that was the second style. Then that useless blonde tried his lightning technique again, but Zhang Ping kicked him in the groin before he could complete it. Jimin was already impressed, wondering how Zhang Ping had learned the techniques just by seeing them once. She even asked if, in the future, he could teach her when she didn't understand something. Zhang Ping agreed, and she thanked him, saying that together they would get much stronger. Zhang Ping knew that with her 7-star growth potential, she really had promise. Maybe, in the future, he would be the one needing her help. When they arrived at the academy, they saw a bunch of people panicking because it seemed like the instructor was coming back. She even mentioned that Instructor Baide was a bit cruel, and those who didn't complete their missions were usually punished. Zhang Ping asked if she had been punished, and she admitted that she was probably punished the most since she hadn't managed to accomplish much in a month. Zhang Ping wondered why she seemed so proud of that. Then someone opened the door and everyone greeted the instructor. Jimin told Zhang Ping to be respectful and cautious. The first thing the instructor said was to run 50 laps. Zhang Ping noticed the man's name was Baide, a level 25 human. He could already tell that Baide was strong, especially since his level was on par with Zizi's. Baide then asked Zhang Ping if he was the one who helped with the issue at the other school. Zhang Ping responded that he was. Baide prepared a fist and told Zhang Ping to take a look. Zhang Ping tried to explain that he wasn't that strong, but he began dodging the attacks. Baide asked what was up with that beginner talk, as he had heard that Zhang Ping learned the Monkey King technique after just one demonstration. Baide came at him, and Zhang Ping realized he wouldn't be able to dodge. However, the instructor was kind and just gave him a soft tap. Baide admitted that at first he didn't believe it, but Zhang Ping really did have potential. It was just a shame that he had learned from someone so useless. The movements that person showed weren't even close to the real ones. Baide said he would personally teach Zhang Ping, and the boy thanked him. But now it was time to deal with the slackers from earlier. Baide ordered everyone form a line and fight him, followed by 500 push-ups and a 10 kilometers run. As someone touched Zhang Ping, it was Jimin, embarrassed. He asked what was wrong. She said the instructor had never taught her privately, so she would love it if he could pass on his knowledge to her later. Zhang Ping agreed, saying they could go to the Soul Iron shop later to train together. She beamed with excitement, saying she thought he would reject her. The system showed Zhang Ping that she had a weakness, as it took her 90% longer to learn anything. However, if she trained the same thing every day, her learning speed would increase by 10% each day, up to a maximum of 100%. Clearly, this ability was a nightmare for the teacher, who didn't know why she couldn't learn anything. 5 days passed, and they were back at the blacksmith shop. Someone commented that her movement was wrong. The diligent boy had taken her to the basement and was teaching her, explaining that she was doing it all wrong. Even though he was breaking the technique into parts, she still couldn't get it right. But that beast fist technique he had learned was